Hi, I'm Chris Summers with Unhedged.
Hey everyone, and I'm Austin Hankwitz. I don't have a cool website like Chris does, but I do have a TikTok and a couple other cool places I'm publishing content to. Welcome back to Interesting Ideas, where Chris and I sit down with you all and share our interesting ideas. Today we have a very interesting idea that we're both still learning more about, but certainly is worth keeping an eye on, which is called the Porch Group.
Austin, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about what the Porch Group does?
Not a problem. So first off, Porch Group is ticker PRCH for all of you all that are following along at home. So let's start at the beginning. Back in 2012, Porch started as a marketplace for homeowners to find contractors, similar to an Angie's List or Thumbtack is today. This was a website or platform to connect homeowners to people who could help you with your plumbing problems, your AC problems, whatever you needed. It was as a really trusted handyman website. And while sort of connecting these people together, Porch then realized there was a massive white space in sort of further improving that workflow dynamic for these contracting companies. So if that's a CRM or an ERP, these contractors needed it and they didn't exactly have the technology infrastructure in place to leverage that, right? So Porch's team of engineers built out this robust and scalable software that the home services companies could use to help them grow, right? So if that's leveraging a CRM to keep tabs on their customers or an ERP to help with payroll, HR, and supply chain. So in acknowledging that a lot of these contractors are very local versus nationwide, national based, they realize that as small businesses, you guys probably know, cash is king. And so if a small business could maybe enter into some sort of bartering agreement to keep as much cash in their bank account as possible, it's not a bad idea. And so generally speaking, how all this really came together for Porch Group is they built this awesome software, if it's CRM and ERP software, for these local small business contracting companies and there's handyman in general to leverage to build out their business. And in exchange for that, they're going to give it to these contractors for free. In exchange for that, they're going to disclose, the contractors are going to disclose to Porch Group who is asking for these services. So a good example of this is home inspections. So normally people get their home inspected before they're going to move or put on the market, something of that nature. And so what happens is these home inspectors leverage this free software that the Porch Group has created to obviously inspect the home with and generate revenue as a company. In exchange for that, they say, hey, thanks Porch Group for letting us use your software. Here's whose home we inspected. They say they're going to move pretty soon. You go do what you want with that information. And what normally happens with this information is now they're sort of front running the move process. So Porch then is able to introduce them to a moving company, maybe a new home insurance company, or maybe a real estate agent or utility, something of that nature, where they have a revenue model, a revenue share model with. And from that, the Porch Group has built out a network of over 11,000 of these sort of agents that are leveraging the software and this big ecosystem of so big actually that nearly 2/3 of all U.S. home buyers flow through the Porch software platform.
That's awesome. One of the things I thought was cool about this company, I read about it earlier this spring. There was a negative presentation on it that I read. And one of the big criticisms was the company had done a lot of pivoting, which means, shifting the business plan over the years. So the company's almost 10 years old. So I kind of wanted to know where they are right now and what the opportunity is. And the way the business works today, as I largely understand it, is they offer a great service to home inspectors. And historically, no one has really gone after the home inspector market. And what's interesting about that is home inspectors are one of the first people that get involved with the home transaction process, because well before you move or even necessarily close on the house, you have to have it inspected to make sure it's in great shape, etc. So they're getting ahead of everybody else that learns about the moving process. And their software basically allows the home inspector to fill out those reports using the Porch Group software.
Mm-hmm.
And what that gives them is, in return, those contractors, the home inspectors, give Porch Group the home buyer's information, which the home buyer voluntarily opts into. And now Porch can say to moving companies, to internet cable companies, to
Yep.
utility companies, to homeowners insurance, which Porch also recently entered, which is, I think, the biggest opportunity here.
Hmm.
So they can connect all these business models associated with the moving process. And when you look at their competition, when it comes to home inspectors, no one is there. So they kind of have almost the entire market now of any of these home inspectors that are using software to help automate the process. So when you think about the criticism of the business pivoting a lot over the last 10 years, it makes me think about Facebook and MySpace.
Hmm.
Why is MySpace gone and Facebook here? It's because Mark Zuckerberg constantly pivoted and went where the opportunity presented itself. And it's the same thing with Netflix. If Netflix hadn't pivoted, they'd still be mailing DVDs to people. So I
100%.
saw that as opportunity and not as necessarily a negative.
I agree with that. And just to really nail home that Netflix, I mean, they pivoted more recently, right? They're getting into gaming, they're trying to figure out what's next. And I think Porch Group is figuring out that this sort of insurance technology play has a larger total addressable market, and it's where they can really thrive as a company.
Definitely. And then let's talk some numbers. The model at scale should have contribution margins of around 50%. And they believe the total addressable market is well in excess of $100 billion. And out of that 50% contribution margin, that means for every $100 of product they sell, $50 flows through, and then they have to have cover all their overhead expenses and things like that, which gets you to your operating profit margin. And they believe long term, the operating profit margin is around 25%. So within the next foreseeable future, they've already painted a path to how they could get to $1.5 billion of revenue from this year's guidance of 180 million, which is already up from last year's 72 million, which
Yep.
includes some acquisitions, of course. But you can see as this company scales, it can really start to generate a lot of money relative to its current only 1.7, $1.8 billion market cap.
Absolutely. And I think what's also incredibly interesting to think about, and I'm not, is more speculating and just thinking what's interesting than any other concrete examples we've talked about thus far, but just how big and how transformative and what's happening now in real estate, right? We've seen Zillow go from Zillow 1.0 to 2.0. Open Doors now coming into the mix. We see now a lot of millennials are beginning to buy homes and think through what that process looks like. And just the other, I think, week we saw a uptick in the amount of existing home inventory on the market, right? The real estate is in this sort of transformative era, in my opinion. And I think that the Porch Group has positioned itself in such a way that allows it to have its hands and fingers in all these different sort of pots, cookie jars of what is, fun to interact with in real estate.
Definitely. And it certainly hasn't escaped some smart people's radars because at least two very successful investment managers have significant positions in this company now,
Hmm.
including South Point Capital and Sachem Head, both of which have excellent historical long-term investment track records. And they both own north of 2 to 3 million shares each. That kind of caught my eye as well.
Most definitely. And I think what's, also interesting and worth calling out is a lot of these, equity analysts on Wall Street are covering them, right? For such a 1.7 billion dollar company is what it's, trading at right now. I feel like normally there's not, 6 or 7 analysts on Wall Street who sort of care about such a small company. This includes Oppenheimer, Stevens, Benchmark, Craig Hallam, all these companies all these equity analysts that we're familiar with that cover the big companies. They're sort of saying, hey, what's Porch Group doing? This is pretty interesting what they're building over here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's going to be fun to watch, and
Most definitely.
the opportunity in the white spaces seems very large, and now they've got to execute, and we'll see what happens.
For sure. Thanks, guys, for joining us. If you think this is interesting as well, leave it in the comments below. Give us some feedback. If you have an idea of something that's interesting to you, we'd love to hear it and talk about it. And thanks for joining. We'll see you soon.